fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion, full of fallen, conditioned souls.
Who's cooking the breakfast? You and Santos. Big crowd. A lot of sleeping souls. Yeah, Jiv Jago. Anyway, we will tolerate. Jayo Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hati Radha Madhava Jayo Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hati Gopi Janabalabha Iri Varadari Gopi Janabalabha Iri Varadari Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jamuna Tera Banachate Yamuna Tera Banachare Jayaradhumadhuva Kunyabihati Jayaradhumadhuva Kunyabihati Gopi Janabalabha Irimadadhati Gopi Janabalabha Irimadadhati Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jamuna Tera Manachare Yamuna Tera Manachare Jayaran Madhuva Kunyabihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari Madhava Jabihari Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Paragacharya also Tada Sachashi Shimad, His Divine Grace Abhaya Charananda Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Anantakoti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Say Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shidwaita Gadadha Shiva Siddhi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Saima Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavanam Ki Jai, Maturidam Ki Jai, Jagadasam Ki Jai, Yamunamai Ki Jai, Shrimati Lasi Devi Ki Jai, Samveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Namam Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Pastaya Bhutale, Srimati Bhaktivedanta Samati Jnamani, Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaurvadi Pacharne, Nivashesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deja Tarne. So, okay. So today we are reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 55th chapter, text 2. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Sa eva jato vaidarbhyang Krishna virya samudbhava pradyumna iti vikyata sarvato navama pitu Saeva jato vaidarbhyam Krishna virya samudbhava pradyumna hitsi vikyata sarvato navamapitu Saheva jato vaidarbhyam Krishna virya samudbhava pradyumna hiti vikyata sarvato navamapitu Saheva jato vaidarbhyam Krishna virya samudbhava pradyumna iti vikyata sarvato navamapitu Seva jato vaidarbhyam Savirya samudbhava pradyumna iti vikyata Sarvamapitu Devajata Vaidarbhyam Shnavirya Samudbhava Ajuniti Vikyata Sarvato Navama Pitu. Seva Jato Vaidarbhyam. Navirya Samudbhava. Prajuneti Vikyata. Sarvato Navama Pitu. Anyone else? No? Asa He Eva Indeed Jata I just turned something over with my watch. Taking birth. Vaidarbhyam, and the daughter of the king of Vidarbha. Krishna Virya, from the seed of Lord Krishna. Samudbhava, generated. Pradyumna, iti, thus. Vikyata, known. Sarvata, in all aspects. Anavama, not inferior. Pitu, to his father. So translation, he took birth in the womb of Vaidarbhi, of course that's Rukmini, from the seed of Lord Krishna, and received the name Pradyumna. In no respect was he inferior to his father. So you can repeat. He took birth in the womb of Vaidarbhi from the seed of Lord Krishna, and received the name Pradyumna. In no respect was he inferior to his father. So there's no purport by the followers of his divine grace, Srila Prabhupada. So I am going to read the commentaries of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Jiva Goswami and Sanatana Goswami, which are short commentaries. Kamadeva thus became famous as Pradyumna. Actually, Pradyumna is part of the Chatur Vyuha with Satchidananda body, whereas Kamadeva is just a jiva with special powers. Gopal Tapani Upanishad says, Krishna remains with three energies in Mathura, Baladev, Aniruddha Pradyumna, and Rukmini, because Baladev is Sankarshan. In the first canto, Narada's mantra says, Namastama Tasmai Bhagavat Krishnaya Kuntamedase Pradyumnaya Ya Aniruddhaya Nama Sankarshanaya Cha. This verse mentions that Pradyumna was not less than his father Krishna in any way. Kamadeva, the servant of Indra, can never be described in this way. Thus, Kamadeva entered into Pradyumna by the will of the Lord, just as the universe enters into the Lord, or as Drona merged with Nanda. Of course, Drona is the demigod, Drona and Dara, the demigods who prayed to have Krishna as their son. And those demigods merged somehow or other. I mean, this is something that's very sophisticated or beyond our ability to understand what that means. Merged, entered, merged, became not one, because two souls can't become one, but somehow or other function in coordination. I think that's a more precise way of saying it. Function in coordination with Nanda, who is eternally the father of Krishna, and Yashoda, who is eternally the mother of Krishna. No one else can become the mother or father of Krishna in reality. Of course, no one actually is the mother or father of Krishna, because Krishna is Ajopisana Vyatma Bhutanami Shiropisham Praktim Swama Dishtaya Sambhavami Admamaya. Krishna is unborn, he's a transcendental body. So, anyway, Jiva Goswami's commentary. Pradyumna, who arises from Krishna's potency, appears as an expansion of Krishna in every kalpa, He is famous, Vidyata, as a member of the Chaturvyuha. He appeared Jata from Rukmini. The material Kamadev had merged into him. There's that merging again, since Prajuna was not less than his father. And finally, Sanatana Goswami. He, the Lord, not his Angsa, it's part, was born from Rukmini. In other words, not there's Swamsa, Vivinamsa, and Swamsa. That's it. So Amsa, it's not a Vivinamsa, it's Swamsa. It's directly the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Was born from Rukmini, but there's a special twist to this I'm going to read in a little while. Since he arose from the Virya or special Shakti of the Lord directly, he was Krishna's son by birth. Prajuna was the cause of Cupid, who was burned by Shiva's anger, appearing again. In other words, Prajuna, part of his vibhuti, is Cupid, which is described in the Gita. We're going to read that verse in a second. Thus he gained more power than previously. He was not inferior to his father, since he was Bhagawan, a member of the Chaturvyuha. For special pastimes, he took up the powers of Cupid. And we're going to talk about Cupid today, too, since so many of you are interested in Cupid. Appearing completely along with his Angsa Cupid, Angsa, part and parcel, separate from Krishna, he was born providing a body for Cupid's burned body. He is famous by the name of Pradyumna, since Pradyumna was the chief identity. This is described in the Bhagavatamrita. Very complex here. Saeva jato vaidarbhyam Krishna virya samudbhava Pradyumna iti vikyata sarvato navama pituhu so omagana timidanda shah gananjana shlakya chakshurun meditam yena tasmai shri gurave namaha. So to further clarify Pradyumna's, what we call, ontological position. Ontological means basically who he is. What his identity is. That's a big word we use sometimes. What his nature is. It's a complete 360 description of someone. So, I am going to read from Jiva Goswami's elaborate statements in the Krishna Sandarbha, in which he describes these different personalities more precisely. And the Krishna Sandarbha and the Sandarbhas are divided in Anuchedas, so that we're going to read Anucheda 87 and 88. It's going to be a little bit repetitive from what you've heard before, but still it fills out the information more about Pradyumna's position. And then I'm going to present one of the Acharya's commentaries on Pradyumna, which is like a slightly different position, a different position on Pradyumna's nature in this world. Okay. So the statement that Pradyumna, burned by Shiva's glance, became material Cupid is a limited proposal. This is Anucheda 87. It is said, and I'm going to skip the Sanskrit because we don't have a lot of time. There the powerful Lord Krishna resides, situated with excellent pastimes, accompanied by Balaram, Aniruddha, Pradyumna, and by his Shakti Rukmini. And that's from the Gopal Tapani Upanishad. It is impossible for him to be born materially, since it is well known he is eternally situated within the Chaturvyuha with Krishna, whereas Cupid is not included in the Chaturvyuha, since he is a particular devata. It's described that Indra has like 12 assistants. He's one of the 12 assistants. And of course, he assists Indra in bewildering sages and in bewildering the conditioned souls. And of course, Indra himself becomes subjected to this Cupid demigod, Kandarpa. Therefore it is said, and skipping the Sanskrit again, the real Kamadev is an expansion of Vasudeva. Cupid had previously burned by Rudra's anger. Another interesting statement from the Puranas is that Rati who was actually the wife of Cupid, she prayed and did austerities to Lord Shiva to have him appear as Prajuna, to have him get another body because his previous body was burned by Lord Shiva. So Lord Shiva was the one who actually, in one sense, arranged for the material Cupid to merge or to somehow or other work with Prajuna, who is the Chaturvyuha. So this is Lord Shiva's arrangement. Though a Brahmana ignorant of the Vedas may exist, a real Brahmana knows the Vedas. The word tu indicates the real position. The real Kamadev is an expansion of Vasudev. So in other words, Prajuna is the real Kamadev. And we'll talk about that hopefully if we have time. Or the word tu indicates a new topic. Stating Vasudev's Amsa is Kamadev has the same meaning. He was previously burnt by Shiva's anger. The material Devata Cupid, in order to take a body, entered Prajuna, the Angsa of Vasudev, known as Cupid, since it was impossible to otherwise attain a body. This is all repetitive. So I'm not going to read this part. He was not burnt, that is Prajuna was not burned since he was Vasudev's Amsa. So, in Anucheda 88, it is said, skipping the Sanskrit, he took birth in the womb of Vidarbhi from the seed of Krishna, received the name Prajuna, in no respect was he inferior to his father. That's repeating the Bhagavatam verse, which we read today. He arose from Krishna's seed and was named Prajuna. He appeared born from Vidarbhi at the time of Krishna's pastimes on earth. This person was not the other material Cupid. If this is repetitive, here. So here, if it was otherwise, it would not be said to be equal to Krishna. Though Arjuna is famous as being Nara in the Mahabharata, in the story of the 5 Indras, Indra becomes Arjuna. This actually means that Indra entered Arjuna. So the Mahabharata describes that there's 5 Indras, and they have made some offense or something like that, and they're cursed in some way, and then one of those Indras actually becomes Arjuna. So this is understood that that particular Indra enters the Arjuna, the eternal Arjuna, because Arjuna is eternally with Krishna whenever Krishna appears, as Krishna says to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, that you were present when I instructed Vivaswam many millions of years ago, and many, many births you and I have taken, and he's eternally with Krishna each time Krishna appears. So there's an Indra who entered or merged into Arjuna. So the same thing happens with Jiva souls, not only with Vishnu Tattva expansions of the Lord. There's some sort of combination which is beyond my ability to understand what that actually means. This actually means that Indra entered Arjuna. Narada explained that Cupid had entered Prajuna, and attaining him was not a fault on Rati's part. Since the previous verse must be explained in terms of the later verse, by the strength of Narada's explanation, it is understood that the burnt-up material Cupid had entered Prajuna. Rati's qualification for directly contacting Prajuna is like being touched by a touchstone. By contact with him, she develops similar qualities. In other words, she was qualified to come in contact with a material Cupid, but not with the spiritual Cupid. But by coming in contact with the spiritual Cupid, Prajuna, she became qualified, because Prajuna is a touchstone. However, Prajuna's own Shakti, or consort, and this gets a little bit more interesting, is the mother of Aniruddha. So Prajuna, in other words, Prajuna is married to Rati, but Prajuna has his Shakti, which is somehow or other connected to Rati, so that he and Rati can have the son named Aniruddha. Got it? The Gopal Tapana Upanishad states, agrees with this conclusion about Prajuna and Aniruddha. Shukadev speaks the verse. So then there's some interesting, which appears to be a little different opinion from a different acharya. This is, of course, Sridhar Swami, right here. This is from Prabhupada's purport in the 5th canto, 18th chapter, text 15. He says, this Kamadev who appears as Krishna's son named Pradyumna is Vishnu Tattva. That's an agreement. However, this is Madhvacharya's commentary. How this is so explained by Madhvacharya, who quotes from the Brahmanda Purana, Kamadeva stitam Vishnum upasate. Although this Kamadeva is Vishnu Tattva, his body is not spiritual. So this is, a little bit different. Sometimes the acharyas, they have some different angle of vision. But material, this is Prabhupada. I've not made this up. It's not my own translation of the commentaries. This is Prabhupada's direct words. Lord Vishnu as Pradyumna or Kamadev accepts a material body, but still he acts spiritually. It does not make a difference whether he accepts a spiritual or material body. He can act spiritually in any condition of existence. Mayavadi philosophers regard even Lord Krishna's body as material, but their opinions cannot impede the spiritual activity of the Lord. So let me just clarify this word material, because we understand that anything used in Krishna's service is not material, right? Like to say this microphone is material is not precisely correct according to our philosophy. Now, it's still made of earth, water, fire, air, and ether. Not mind, intelligence, and falsity, though. So it's still made of these 5 elements, which Krishna describes as Bina Prakriti Ashtada, which are separated material elements. However, because they're being used in Krishna's service, these elements, they're considered spiritualized. So what I'd like to do is, instead of saying Pradyumna, I'm trying to just understand these things. Pradyumna Kamadev accepts a material body. They accept a physical body, to be more precise. You understand? A physical body that is spiritualized by him serving Krishna. So, of course, this is a little bit different opinion because we read previously in the other acharyas' commentaries that the body is completely spiritual, Satchidananda. So, but there's an allowance for that in Vaishnavas to have some discussion. That's called vada. Vada means you respect the other person's opinion. He presents the scriptural quotations, which Sripad Madhvacharya has just done from Brahmanda Purana. And this is not a difference in Siddhanta. There's not a difference in Siddhanta. Try to understand that the Vaishnavas don't differ in Siddhanta. They may differ in details, certain details. Okay, we took that up. Interesting, so in other words, to understand Krishna consciousness, one has to have intelligence and not fight over details or understanding like that. The Siddhanta means we're not the body, we're not the body, we're not Vishnu Tattva, we don't have a spiritual body right now. We have a spirit, but it's covered. That's Siddhanta. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, chanting Krishna's names. Krishna is non-different from his names. Nama Chintamani, Krishna is Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha, Purnashura Nityam Flow, Vinatvam Nama Nama. That's all Siddhanta, things like that. But, there are some details, so we don't want to get confused. I mean, even that whole discussion about where the soul comes from. It's actually stated by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, if one gets into an argument based on that, everything becomes lost. So you don't argue about stuff like that. So, getting on with this together. So let's quote from the Bhagavad Gita where Krishna, I want to talk about Cupid right now, because not that it's going to be a romantic class, But so the Bhagavad Gita does tell us that Cupid is a manifestation of vibhuti. In the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, we find the chapter is entitled Vibhuti Yogam. So 10:28 reads, Ayudanam aham vayashram, denunam asmi kamaduk, vajanas chasmi kandarpa, sarpanam asmi vasuki. Of weapons I'm the thunderbolt, among cows I'm the surabhi, of causes for procreation I am Kandarpa, the god of love, and of serpents I am Vasuki. So these vibhutis means the energetic manifestations of Krishna that we see in this world. And of course, these are not Vishnu Tattva, so it's not that necessarily we should meditate on sharks or Vasuki or what to speak of Cupid. But we understand aham sarvasya prabho matak sarvam pavartate iti matva bhajantivam buddhabhavam samavata. What do we understand? That everything comes from Krishna. So the whole point is to help us see Krishna everywhere and in everything. Yomam pashati sarvatra sarvam chamai pashati. See Krishna and everywhere and everything. And once we could see Krishna everywhere, everything, not say this code is Krishna, but it's Krishna's energy. It's meant to be used to serve Krishna some way or other. So anyway, that's the vibhuti. So Cupid is also described as ananga. Ananga means without a body, and that of course refers to when Lord Shiva burnt him up with his glance because he tried to agitate Lord Shiva, and Lord Shiva's not going to put up with that. So, Ananga for us means he may come, he's invisible, and you don't get any warning when he's coming. In other words, lust. Avritam jnaname tena jnanino nichavirina kama rupena kundya dushparena lenacha. While contemplating objects of the senses. You may not think Cupid's present, but you just contemplate something, whether, of course, the typical example is a boy and girl, boy, like that. But there's other objects like that. Then you develop attachment, and attachment eventually become lusty, and eventually become angry. So, from the Bhagavad Gita, we find some information in the 3rd chapter. There's quite a few verses, one of which I just quoted, but I'm going to read some of the English of these verses. In 37, Krishna says, it is lust only, Arjuna, which is born of contact with the material mode of passion and later transformed into wrath, which is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. All-devouring. Just think about those words. All-devouring sinful enemy. In other words, it's your greatest enemy, not another person. And then the Bhagavad Gita goes on to describe, 37, 38, that there's different degrees of this lust, according to how immersed you are, fire covered by smoke, mirror dust, or an embryo in the womb, which is the heaviest covering. Different degrees of this lust. So everyone is covered who's not Krishna conscious by this lust. And where does the lust reside, according to the Bhagavad Gita? Anyone know? Senses, mind, and intelligence. Because that's not the mind, that's the brain. I can't even point to intelligence. So all these become affected by lust. It's not simply, some hormonal change in the body. The hormonal change or manifestation is simply evidence of something that's happening. Yeah, well, the heart, what does the heart mean? It's not that. It's not that soul precisely is lusty. So in the heart, there's the soul, and then there's the intelligence connected to the soul. So senses, mind, intelligence. So Krishna says we should use our intelligence later in the, not later actually, later in the third chapter, Krishna says we should use our intelligence, knowing oneself to be transcendental to material mind and intelligence. So we know that we're above that. So even though we may have the impulse to act in a certain way, should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence, and by spiritual intelligence, conquer the insatiable enemy known as lust. Spiritual intelligence. That means we do the right thing. And in the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the methodology of going back to Godhead, because first in the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita you find the upside-down banyan tree described, which is indicates this material world's a reflection of the spiritual world. And then the verse 5, you find nirmana moha jita sangha dosha avyatma necha vinivrita kama vandwara vimukta sukha dukkha sangya gachancha muda padamavyam tat. Be freed from what? Nirmana moha, illusion. Jita sangha dosha, giving up bad association of other people who are lusty. Vinivrita kama, giving up that lust. Dvandvara vimukta, not seeing I and mine or the dualities of this material world. Sukha dukkha sangya, or even the dualities of happiness and distress. Gachancha muda padam avyam tat. That person can go back to Godhead. And then also in the 16th chapter of the Gita, we find the description that, again, decrying lust or Cupid. There's 3 gates leading, isn't it? To hell. Lust, anger, and greed. So you find a lot of heavy statements about this lust. All devouring sinful enemy of this world, lust, anger, greed. I mean, so many statements there. So, let's see, how much time do I have? So anyway, so we find many great personalities became overcome by lust and really deviated from their spiritual path. I'm not going to tell the whole story about Vishwamitra Muni, because Vishwamitra Muni and Menaka, he was deviated from his determination, and then Ramba later on, who he was able to conquer the lust, but with anger. And then we find, in the Bhagavatam, you find so many stories about how strong this lust is. And then one of my favorite stories, of course, is Pururava and Urvasi. And he was so attached to her, that she was cursed to come down to this world and have some relationship with Pururava. And to make a long story short, she left him, and he just started wandering all over the world like a crazy man, looking for her. And then she agreed to be with him one day a year, and he was just still going crazy. And then eventually he performed a whole fire sacrifice so he could go back to home, back to Urvasi in the heavenly planets. The Bhagavatam story. His lust makes you crazy. Nunam pramata kurute vikarma yad indriya pritya pranoti, as Lord Shavade states. Nunam pramata kurute vikarma. One becomes crazy and commits sinful activities. Of course, Pururava wasn't doing sinful activities, but still one becomes crazy. Pramada. Crazy because of this lust. So, now the question is, I want to leave enough time for this. So, how can you cure lust? It's a disease. It's interesting. It's a disease. Dis-ease. It puts you at uneasiness, unhappiness, lamentation. Of course, in the spiritual world, you have the lamentation of the gopis, But that lamentation is ecstasy. In the material world, the lamentation, not only lamentation, but you're worried about the faithfulness of the other person. It's just like anxiety. Okay. So first, I want to describe how Krishna is the actual transcendental Cupid. And there's an interesting verse from the Adi Leela, chapter 8, text 51, which describes Krishna as the transcendental Cupid. Tateva siyache sada brajendra nandana Shri Govinda Deva Nama Sakshat Madana Sakshat Madana. On that throne sits the son of Nanda Maharaj, Shri Govinda Deva, the transcendental Cupid. Beautiful verse by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. And Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he also talks about how to become free from lusty desires. This is from his Amrita Vani. That means nectarian instructions or nectarian words. This topic is how to become free from lusty desires. And here's the quote. Having lusty desires means we want to enjoy sense gratification. It is the living entity's duty to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Aversion to the Lord's service drowns us in an ocean of material misery. If we wish to become liberated from that misery, we must serve the non-envious servants of Krishna. That is the only remedy. Krishna's servants alone can protect us from lust. We tend towards lustiness because we are not inclined to serve Krishna, the transcendental Cupid. Again, that statement, the slightest disturbance in the attempt to satisfy that lust makes us angry. Lusty desire is the mother of all sense gratification. The only occupation of the spirit soul is to gratify the transcendental Cupid senses. One who acts for this purpose finds the seed of lusty desires destroyed by his service and surrender to Sri Krishna. Just let me read one quote from the Bhagavatam. When the young ladies in the cowherd village of Vraja heard the song of Krishna's flute, which arouses the influence of Cupid, the transcendental Cupid, some of them privately began to describe Krishna's qualities to their intimate friends. Krishna's beauty and character creates a festival for all women. Indeed, when the demigods' wives flying in airplanes with their husbands catch sight of him and hear his resonant flute song, their hearts are shaken by Cupid, and they become so bewildered that the flowers fall out of their hair and their belts loosen. That's the cure for lust. And actually, ultimately, there's a quote from Prabhupada, which I don't have time to read, in a letter to Hayagriva, in which Prabhupada talks about how to conquer. He says, regarding your enemy, Mr. Lust, he says, Krishna is stronger than any demon, and Mr. Lust or his father or grandfather, no one can do anything. And then he prescribes not getting married. He describes deity worship to Hayagriva. It's a famous quote, and it's quite lengthy, and actually we're out of time. So, anybody have a quick question? Yeah. Yeah. Right. Hearing about Krishna's pastimes with the gopis, from the right person, of course. Saprochisti atapaya. One should not hear from someone, a Vaishnava Mukod, Girnam Putam Harikatam, Shovananaga Kartatim. So anyway, time to greet the deities. Anyone have any other questions? Yeah. That's very interesting. Because in pride, one thinks one, Iswaroham aham bogi, Siroham balaban sukhi, according to the 16th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. One thinks that he's the enjoyer, rather than thinking Bhaktaram Jagatapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram, that Krishna is the enjoyer, the proprietor, and everything like that. That's how it's connected. self-centeredness, my enjoyment. If one's thinking of Krishna's enjoyment, self-centeredness is pride. Whoops, it's time. Yeah, you have a question? Yeah, yeah. Body of a pure devotee is spiritual, but it's, anyway, but it's also composed of, earth, water, fire, air, and ether, but spiritualized. Just like anything Prabhupada used, like you go to Vrindavan and you see, like the shaver, Prabhupada used the buzzer, and I see in one of the cabinets, that's worshipable because it was Prabhupada's paraphernalia. But it's not that we could say that it's not made of metal or plastic. Yeah. Yeah. So it's not material, it's spiritual. It's a spiritual body, like Prabhupada's body is spiritual. Okay. All right. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Enam Kanvandam Maravindanalayataptam Marhavatam Samasitam Buddhasundarangam Kandar Agom Vidamaniya Vishesha Shobham Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Anganiyasa Sakalen Priya Priti Manti Vasyan Dipan Dikayanti Jiram Naganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadhu Jala Vigrahasya Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam
Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. Namago Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shimate Jagan Samming Niti Nomine Namaste, Saraswati Deve, Gauravani Vacha, Neke Nivesesha, Shunyavali, Paschachagade, Satarane. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nanda Shri Advaita Gadada Siva Sati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadada Siva Sati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Gadada Siva Sati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha, looking nana Radha, looking nana Radha Te. Jaya Radha, looking nana Radha, looking nana Radha Te. Jaya Radha, hey. Radhe Nayarande Nayarante